All right, what's going on, everyone? In this video, I'm going to go over one of the concepts that I use in my strategy. I've decided to kind of make a video separate of each concept because it's very important for you to understand each concept to its 100%. So then when I explain my strategy and how I put all these together, it makes sense for you, right? Because if you don't understand one concept, then the whole strategy just isn't going to make sense and work for you. You need to understand each concept separately, and then I'll make a video of how I implement all these different concepts that I'm going to be going over in the next couple of videos into one strategy and use that to execute my trades. All right, so in this one, I'm going to be talking about fair value gaps. I'm going to be telling you guys what they are and how they look in the market. So a fair value gap is basically an imbalance or a gap that gets formed in the market. Now, how does this gap get formed? Well, to form a fair value gap, you need 3 candlesticks. It doesn't matter if they're red candlesticks or green candlesticks. All you need is 3 candlesticks. Now, if you're looking for a fair value gap to the upside, so a bullish fair value gap, you would want it to look something like this. I'm going to first draw it out and then show it to you guys in the charts. So it's going to look something like this, where you have, let's say this is one candle, and then you have another candle, and then another one, right? Because it takes 3. Now, what needs to be special about these 3 candles? Well, the wicks of the candles, right, which is where price moved up to but didn't close. All it did was move up to that point, right? It filled orders there, but it didn't end up closing there. So for a fair value gap to be formed, the wicks need to create, or how should I say it, need to leave the body of the candle in the middle intact, right? So here, what this is forming, let me finish drawing it out. All right, the candles, the wicks in the middle candle don't matter, but what matter is the candles on the outside, their wicks need to leave a gap in this candlestick, right? And all this gap is basically an imbalance where price is most likely to retrace to fill more orders. So this is an example of fair value gap. Now, what wouldn't be a fair value gap? Well, it would look something like this, where this wouldn't be a valid fair value gap, right? You still have the 3 candlesticks, but what makes this one not valid is the wicks of this one go up and don't allow for a gap to be formed, right? It fills all the orders in this body. So here you don't have a gap. You can't draw anything, right? Because you want to draw a gap at the high of the wick of the first candle and the low of the wick of the second one. Now, if you're looking for bearish gaps, it's obviously going to be the opposite. So I'll show you guys examples of candle, fair value gaps to the downside. So it would look something like this, where you have one candle there, right? These are all going down. And their wicks would look, let's say, something like this. And why is this a valid fair value gap? Well, because the wicks didn't overlap each other, right? The outside wicks didn't overlap each other. they left the gap in the middle where orders are going to be able to then get filled for a retracement. And a retracement would look something like this. Candlesticks, candlesticks, go back in, fill the orders, and then end up going back down. And for the upside, it would be the same thing. Boom, goes down, taps into that, right? It grabs more orders from that gap that weren't able to get filled, and then keeps rallying up. Now, I'm going to show you guys examples of this in the chart. All right. All right, this is a pretty good example. So here. All right, normally when you're looking for these gaps, you want to go to the time frame that gives you a clean fair value gap. As you can see here, here is 4 candles, right? But here it creates multiple fair value gaps, right? There's one here, then there's another one here, and then there's another one here. And there's even another one all the way up here. Now, whenever you see something like this, where on lower time frames, there's just straight line up and just gaps, normally, if you go on the higher time frames, it's all going to combine into one. So let's see if it does. Let's see. And it seems like it does. So on the 4-minute, right, you guys saw me look for the clean fair value gap as I went up. Now, why is this a clean fair value gap? Well, this is the exact same example I drew up for you guys. This is 3 candles, right? And look, it leaves space in the middle. It leaves the gap where you could draw out. And what does price do? Well, it goes back into this gap to fill more orders to then rally all the way up. And look, it even does it again. It comes back down, retraces, gets even more orders, and then boom, move up, right? So this is all a fair value gap is. And look, there's even one to our left. I didn't even see this. All right, this is an example of a bullish fair value gap because as you can see, fair value gap is going up. Now, a bearish fair value gap would look something like this, right? 3 candle formation. And it's fine if one of the candles doesn't have a wick, right? That's fine. You just do it at the point where it closed. So boom, right here. And what does price do? It makes that fair value gap and it comes back in right before going down a little bit more. It comes back in here to fill orders before it comes down. Now, why don't you want to be using this as like your strategy to trade, as like your main strategy? Well, because as you can see here, if you would have taken this, you would have gotten wrecked. Because this doesn't work all of the time. This only works if the context is right. That's the thing with a lot of strategies. Context is very important. So things like liquidity sweeps or how is the market trending? Is the market bearish, bullish? In a bullish market, right? Bearish fair value gaps aren't going to matter. Why? Because price is seeking that liquidity to the upside. Same thing for a bearish market. In a bearish market, fair value gap, bullish fair value gaps aren't going to work because at the end of the day, it's not looking to fill orders to then go up. It's bearish. So it's not going to give a fuck about those fair value gaps. It's just going to keep going down and down and down. So what I mean by that is, all right, let me show you guys an example. Let's say whatever markets like this, boom, and then we created equal lows right here, right? And then market ends up just rallying higher, higher, higher. And suppose we had equal highs, right? And market sweeps them, boom. Now, what would I call this? Well, I would call this sweep liquidity because this is a major liquidity point. And what does market do? It sweeps it. Now, let's say that in this move, it created a fair value gap right here, right? So let's say it created one here. Here. And here, right? Just imagine those are candlesticks. And then it created the gap in the middle. Now, why would I think that this fair value gap would not work, right? Because from what I've been telling you, what you're supposed to think is that, oh, fair value gap's forming and it's just going back into it. It's retracing back into it to then rally up. No, that's not going to happen. Why? Because it just swept major liquidity to the left, right? Liquidity that it needs to fill those sell orders to then do what? Get this liquidity. Because as I said, all market does is seek liquidity and sweep it. It's like a seek and destroy missile. It's basically the market. So if it just swept these highs and you have these equal lows, right? That's very high probability for the market to go down into and take out. Why would you ever think that this is going to work? Why would you ever think that the market's just going to tap into this fair value gap and keep going higher? And what, it's just going to leave these major points of liquidity down there? No, it's not going to do that. Most of the time, it's going to disrespect this fair value gap, right? It's going to break it, and it's just going to go down until it hits and sweeps these points of liquidity. All right, hopefully you guys were able to get an idea of what fair value gaps are, how to spot them. Now, I do have homework for you guys. I want you to go into your charts, and fair value gaps can be found in any single time frame. I could go on the daily and find gaps. Look, there's a gap right here. Boom. Fair value gap. I could go on the 4-hour. Boom. Fair value gap. I could go on the 1-hour. There's fair value gaps everywhere. Another one right here. So all I want you guys to do is so you kind of start practicing so you're able to see them without even trying, is find at least 10 fair value gaps in every single time frame. So you want to have, normally the time frames you want to have up here is 1 minute to the weekly. I don't really use the weekly at all, but I do use daily and 4-hour, but it doesn't matter. You want to go through all of these time frames, find 10 fair value gaps in each time frame, because as I said, they can easily be found in any time frame. Look, I'll go in the 5-minute right now and find one. Boom, right here, right? So that's what I want us to do. In the next video, I'm going to be going over something that's called SMT, and I might as well do equilibrium in that video too. So that's another confluence that I use in my strategy to tell me when to execute trades. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to add, from now on, all these videos I'm going to be making in regards to my strategy are going to be private to the group. They're not going to be public on YouTube anymore. I'm going to leave the ones I made on before on YouTube public, because in those I'm not really giving any information out in regards to my strategy. But from now on, I am going to be making all these videos private and listed just for you guys. And then uh, probably by next week or maybe late this week, I will have the video out where I go over my blueprint and I go over everything. I go over psychology. Um, I go over executions. I go over everything. That's going to be a really long video. But first, I kind of want to split it into parts so you guys understand them, and then make one big video with everything, um, so you guys already know all the concepts before jumping into the long video I'm going to be making.